Tensions are rising across the globe. Tariffs, retaliation, secret negotiations, and sweeping military deals are reshaping the world order, and America is right at the center. From China to Ukraine, from the IRS to the auto industry, everything is in motion. President Donald Trump has issued a warning to America's trading partners: reach a deal within 90 days or face higher tariffs. This comes just after the administration delayed some tariff hikes, pulling them back to a blanket 10% for most countries except China. According to Trump, more than 75 nations are now begging to make new trade deals. He claims this proves diplomacy is working, at least for now. But that window may close quickly. Trump made clear that if the deals aren't good for both sides, tariffs go right back up. Meanwhile, China remains excluded from the tariff pause and is now facing a punishing 145% rate, including a 20% hike tied to fentanyl-related imports. As negotiations unfold, Chinese President Xi Jinping is preparing to host European leaders for a summit. State-controlled outlets describe this as an effort to re-engage with the EU, now that relations with the US are strained. And there's already movement. EU and Chinese officials have agreed to start talks on electric vehicle pricing and automotive investments. That could spell trouble for Western automakers like Tesla, whose Model 3 starts at $42,000 in Europe. Compare that to BYD's new Chinese EVs, some of which start at just $8,000. The stakes go beyond business. While testifying on Capitol Hill, Admiral Samuel Paparo, one of America's top military officials, linked China's economic strength directly to its military expansion. He suggested that reducing trade with Beijing could slow that momentum. And as tensions escalate, the Trump administration has moved to speed up U.S. shipbuilding, which has long been criticized for delays and inefficiencies. Trump's team isn't just negotiating over trade. While specifics are scarce, there are hints that talks with China could extend to issues like nuclear weapons, intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, cyber attacks, and even Beijing's expanding footprint in South America. Meanwhile, Ukraine is taking its own approach to national security. President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced plans to purchase up to $50 billion in U.S. military aid. The package would include 10 Patriot missile batteries, fighter jets, surveillance systems, and more. Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine is not asking for handouts. He said they're ready to pay, and that this purchase would serve as a de facto security guarantee from the United States. This development coincides with Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, arriving in Russia for a third round of direct talks with Vladimir Putin. No official readout yet, but negotiations are underway. On the trade front, China is responding to U.S. tariffs with sharp retaliation. Tariffs on American goods are rising from 84% to 125%. Beijing labeled the U.S. policy economic bullying and warned that Washington's strategy could go down as a historic blunder. They've pledged further retaliation if the situation escalates. Back in the U.S., fallout continues at the IRS. Melanie Krause, the acting commissioner, has stepped down after the agency finalized a deal to share taxpayer data with the Department of Homeland Security. The agreement supports Trump's plan to use IRS records to track down undocumented immigrants. Krause reportedly reviewed a draft version, but only found out the deal had been finalized through the media. She's the third IRS chief to exit in the wake of this plan. The administration is also exploring a restructuring that would shift IRS criminal investigators into immigration-related roles under Treasury oversight. Critics inside the agency have voiced concern, but Trump's Treasury Secretary has already signed off on the deal. Meanwhile, inflation cooled in March. The Consumer Price Index dropped to 2.4% with a slight month-over-month decline. Core inflation excluding food and energy slowed to its lowest rate since March 2021. Gas prices fell more than 6%, offsetting a jump in egg costs. But new tariffs are expected to impact auto prices, and economists warn the inflation relief may not last. Even so, consumer confidence is sinking. The University of Michigan's Sentiment Index dropped 11% in early April to 50 points, its second lowest reading since records began in 1952. The decline was broad-based, across all demographics and regions. Inflation expectations, especially short-term, are surging again. And concern over rising unemployment is now at its highest level since the 2009 recession. General Motors, meanwhile, is pivoting in response to Trump's new 25% tariff on imported autos. The company plans to ramp up production at its Fort Wayne, Indiana facility, including hiring over 200 new workers and running overtime shifts. That plant builds popular trucks like the Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra. GM says it's adjusting to protect U.S. jobs, even as about half of its pickups are still made in Canada and Mexico. Elsewhere, tensions are mounting over immigration. A Columbia University graduate student, Mahmoud Khalil, is now facing deportation. A judge ruled him a national security risk due to his pro-Palestinian activism. Secretary of State Marco Rubio justified the action under a law targeting threats to foreign policy. Khalil's lawyers argue he's being punished for protected speech. Courts in New York and New Jersey have temporarily blocked the deportation, and appeals are underway. In other news, Swiss pharmaceutical giant Novartis has announced a massive $23 billion investment in the United States. Over the next 5 years, the company will build 7 new facilities and expand existing ones, creating nearly 5,000 jobs. New manufacturing plants are planned for Florida and Texas, with upgrades coming to Indiana, New Jersey, and California. Finally, businessman Kevin O'Leary is making headlines again this time for calling on the U.S. to impose a 400% tariff on Chinese imports. He claims China has violated trade rules for decades and says aggressive tariffs are the only way to force fair play. President Trump seems to agree. His administration has already raised Chinese tariffs and is signaling that more could come. As all of this unfolds, European Commissioner Maros Sefcovic is heading to Washington. His goal: restart stalled tariff talks with U.S. officials. The EU hopes to avoid an all-out trade war, warning that prolonged conflict could slash U.S. GDP by more than 1% over the next 2 years. For now, the world waits as negotiations unfold. But the message is clear: economic diplomacy is back on the front lines of global power. That's all for tonight's news update. Thank you for joining us. We'll continue to monitor these stories and bring you the latest developments. Stay safe, stay informed, and have a good night. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update.